Disclaimer: RichieNicksGeeking acknowledges that we do not own the rights to the clips contained in this video. However, these clips are being used for the purposes of criticism, comment, review, teaching, and parody. Therefore, their use falls under fair use per Section 107 of the Copyright Act. Please do not flag this video. Thank you.
The world is changed. Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it.
Welcome to RichieNicksGeeking, my brand new channel where I'll be doing things like analyzing fantasy content and responding to videos about topics such as Lord of the Rings, A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, Star Wars, etc. You get the picture. In my first video, I'll be responding to CinemaSins' video, Everything Wrong with the Fellowship of the Ring. But first, a little background on why. You know, I actually used to really love CinemaSins. Used to. Back in the beginning, in a time long forgotten when they used to come close to making videos that actually were what they claimed to be. And I would leave comments with corrections if I'd seen the movie, and skip most of the videos that were for movies I hadn't actually seen myself before. At some point, I'd had enough of their lying and manipulations of scenes, and I decided that I should do a series parodying their own where I nitpicked their videos. Then I guess Google was listening, and I found Sean and Bob Vids, then JXE back when the channel was known as CinemaSins, and the Birdman. I stopped watching CinemaSins at that point, and I unsubscribed. So unlike Jay and the Birdman, I will not claim that I actually like CinemaSins, and I'm just poking fun. CinemaSins is mostly unfunny, and I cannot find much entertainment in their content other than to correct it anymore. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the movie release of The Fellowship of the Ring on December 19th, 2001. I checked all of the big CinemaSins critique channels, and none of them have touched any of the trilogy yet, so I decided to finally make my own version of these videos. J.R.R. Tolkien's books and Peter Jackson's movies have had an enormous impact on my life. I used to read The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and The Silmarillion annually for nearly 2 decades. So, as both a book and movie nerd, and with the 20th anniversary of the trilogy upon us, let's take a look at CinemaSins' Everything Wrong With videos concerning each of the Lord of the Rings movies. While critiquing the value of the sins, I will be keeping the extended editions in mind. I'm fairly sure CinemaSins used the theatrical releases, and they're probably the versions that most non-fans are most familiar with. I do plan to refer to the books at times, but I also understand that the movies should speak for themselves, so the books won't be used against CinemaSins. They're merely supplementary information. But the extended editions will be because they are the movies. Now with that cleared up, let's look at CinemaSins' Everything Wrong with the Fellowship of the Ring. Ah yes, back in the day when you made relatively shorter videos. I think this means this should be a relatively quality video, right? I mean, it should have fewer filler sins, hopefully. Well, it's an 8-minute video described as being 7 minutes or less, so here's the first sin.
For none now live.
Hey, we need to tell the projectionist there's sound but no picture. Oh.
I guess this could be considered one of the few times you're actually playing the character you claim to be playing in these videos. But if someone said that out loud in a theater, then I'd tell them to wait literally just a few seconds. Like, watch the movie.
One ring to rule them all.
So wait, the One Ring is supposed to control everyone who wore the other rings, right? We're told later that the race of men were turned into the Nazgul, but it didn't affect the elves and dwarves at all? Apparently Sauron put on his ring and tried to control the dwarves and elves by yelling, "Go ring," and all he got was sparks flying out of his finger.
There's some sort of sound editing glitch during everyone. And should I bother getting into the nitty-gritty of grammar? Nah. Pronunciation of Sauron.
What the f*** is Sauron reaching for? Just kill the guy! You have this huge mace for killing!
He's an immortal villain, trying to gloat and be intimidating in a story where the whole point is that evil is self-defeating. Like CinemaSins says, the dude is cocky. He basically just won the battle by himself and got caught off guard by someone doing something unexpected. He was trying to humiliate Isildur, and he wanted to make sure that the battle ended there and then. I know it doesn't really matter, but it's also a change from the book, in which Sauron is actually killed by Elendil in Gil-galad, and Isildur cuts the ring from Sauron's corpse.
Reading.
Oh, that explains a lot.
And I don't expect I shall return. In fact, I mean not to.
After Bilbo's unnerving proclamation, Gandalf apparently said, "Dude, you need to smoke some weed."
And that's a sin. How exactly?
And turn them all to stone.
Bilbo then said, "Kids, I'll tell part 2 of this story next year, and I'll finally finish it the year after that, because even short stories are best when told in trilogies."
While I agree with and enjoy the jab at the Hobbit trilogy, I have to ask again, how exactly is this a sin of this movie?
When you see Gandalf magically transport like this, don't you wonder why he doesn't use magic more often in crucial spots during the trilogy?
What? Gandalf didn't magically transport? What the fuck are you on about? How can a movie critic be so unaware of things like the passage of time between cuts? Bilbo has clearly been packing in the interim.
What about this ring of yours? Is that staying too?
It's in an envelope over there on the mantelpiece.
Gandalf should probably know that that's not true because Bilbo had no time to put it in an envelope, but he goes over to the mantelpiece expecting to find it anyway.
What the fuck are you talking about? He had no time. What? How much time do you think that takes? And even if Gandalf had magically transported himself there, which he didn't, then it's still obvious that Bilbo has walked through that room at least once already. He's coming back into it. How long is it supposed to take you to slip a ring into an envelope and place it on an open space? There, I just did it 3 times in under 15 seconds. No time my ass.
What the f*** was Frodo doing for the last 20 minutes after Bilbo disappeared? Looking for Bilbo in places other than Bilbo's house?
Frodo did exactly what he should have done. As co-host of the party, since it was a joint birthday party, he had over 140 confused, offended, and outraged hobbits to deal with. He indicates that he knew it was going to happen eventually in the movie. He straight up knew about the whole plan in the book. If he had run straight to Bag End to check on Bilbo, then all the party guests would have followed him, and it would have ruined Bilbo's plan. But mostly, it's just the fact that he was the co-host, and especially in this polite Hobbit society, he had to deal with all of the crazed guests. And again, why are you so unaware of the way movies communicate the passage of time? Isn't this your job?
Gandalf sees the freaking eye of Sauron when he stupidly tries to touch the ring, but yet he still needs to do research to figure out what the ring is. Doesn't he have more than enough information at this point to give Frodo a head start before the ring wraiths show up?
Okay, this might actually be a good point. It's a change from the book that actually allows for criticism of the film.
This is the only time in the movie where the Nazgul just straight up murder a dude. All he said was who goes there, and he gets snuffed out.
The only time the Nazgul straight up murder someone? False. They straight up murder the gatekeeper at Bree. I guess that's it for this specific movie, but they are brutal in the rest of the trilogy.
All he said was who goes there, and he gets snuffed out. This could have been the guy who knew all things Baggins, and they just destroyed their best lead.
But hadn't they already been told where to go? Like, haven't we literally already been shown them getting the information they wanted? And now they're just trying to minimize witnesses or something like that? I mean, they find Frodo without this guy's help. So did it really get in the way of their mission? It's trying to show how much danger they're all in.
Yes, Pippin. My point is, he's clearly overreacting.
I guess Farmer Maggot gave up? Or at the very least his side did?
I mean, the shot showing Maggot chasing them didn't show how far away he was. It was merely visually explaining the situation. Yes, they could have outrun Maggot by that wide shot. So what? Maybe he's still chasing them, and he's just too far right of the shot. How is this a sin of the movie? It's not the plot hole you're making it out to be.
Get off the road! Quick!
Convenient hiding tree is convenient.
And what makes this tree convenient? This is one of those things you sin a lot, convenience. I've never really understood your problem with this, or how you even really define convenience. If they had fallen down a different part of that hill, then they just would have hidden behind a different tree on the downhill side of the road because it's literally lined with trees. Hobbits are 3 feet tall. Most places are good hiding spots, and they're literally in a forest filled with trees. And it may only be book information, but they are very good at hiding. Literally one of their traits. Also, this is a moment of book accuracy and recreating a great shot from the animated version.
Also, this one of the 9 is terrible at his job. Isn't the ring supposedly calling to Sauron? I mean, why is he even sniffing? If his nose worked, he clearly would smell the hobbits, or the ring.
Why is he sniffing? Because that's just what they do, and it's book accurate? How is this a sin? He'd clearly smell the hobbits? Why do you think that? Can you smell every single thing around you and locate them all by smell? This is something you actually do a lot. You claim the Nazgul should be able to pinpoint exactly where the ring is, no matter what situation they're in, and you continue to do this even though we're constantly shown that that's simply not the case. They always fail at doing it because they can't do it. You're going to get a sin for every single time you make this mistake. Hasn't Gandalf already explained that it's stronger the closer you are to Mordor, and therefore it's weaker the further you are away? And the Shire is far away from Mordor? Yeah, he did.
If the Nazgul can't detect the ring 2 feet in front of their faces, why didn't Gandalf just find a container for the ring that he could magically seal, or at least lock, and throw away the key so no one could get into it? Frodo wouldn't be tempted to wear it, and no one could possibly detect it, and the road to Mordor becomes that much easier.
Why would there be a road to Mordor in this scenario? You're suggesting they lock and hide away the ring, yet they'd still be headed to Mordor in this hypothetical of yours? Why? They're supposed to carry this safe you've come up with, and that's supposed to make it easier to carry and prevent temptation? How? Did you think this through? How is this a sin of the movie?
Then he falls for the old toss something to distract the bad guy trick from every other movie ever.
Every other movie ever. I get it. It's hyperbole for effect, but inaccuracy is kind of against the whole point in the premise of these videos, right? Right? Hey guys, right? How is it a sin in the movie for a character to behave realistically in world, regardless of whether it's smart or not? Surely that's a sin of the ring wraith, not the movie.
It went from day to night pretty fast here, but maybe that much time has really passed in this case. So if that's true, has the ring wraith been chasing the hobbits for several hours without making one bit of headway? And only now are Merry and Pippin asking what the hell is going on?
Again, why don't you understand cutting the passage of time? Do we really need to see every minute that's passed between then and now? No. Don't people complain that these movies are already too long as is? And to answer your other 2 questions, yes. And yes.
Bad guy doesn't like water cliché.
Yes. Our first encounter with your misuse of cliché. Brilliant!
It's brilliant, 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 I tell you. Genius, I say.
Instead, see this as the setup for what is later paid off at the Bruinen with Arwen.
Peter Jackson tries to one-up M. Night and Hitchcock by gnawing on a carrot during his director's cameo.
Or, he's actually being really passive and discreet about his cameo, unlike in Return of the King.
If the ring can will itself to land perfectly on Frodo's finger, then why the can't it just will itself to fly off into the air and roll its happy way back to Mordor?
What about this situation so much as implies that it can get itself to travel out of the Prancing Pony, never mind all the way to Mordor? If it could do that, then why did it let Gollum find it? If it could do that, then why did it let Bilbo find it? What?
How did Sam, Merry, and Pippin know Frodo was up here? They didn't call out to Frodo when he reappeared downstairs, so were they just running around crashing into every closed door until they finally ran into Frodo?
Okay, first of all, what did you just say?
Merry and Pippin know...
Marianne?
Merry and Pippin. Merry and Pippin.
Marianne Pippin?
Merry and Pippin.
We're not explicitly shown that they didn't see Aragorn take Frodo upstairs, so why just assume they didn't? Even if they were just crashing through every room until they actually found Frodo, then that's a sin. How? So many non-sins. Nonsense. Non-sins. Nonsense. 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 That was easier than I thought it would be.
At all times they feel the presence of the ring, drawn to the power of the one.
Until it's convenient for them not to be drawn to it.
Dude, the ring wraith still knew they were nearby earlier, right? Like, he clearly knew to stop there and take a look around, right? Saying they can always sense it doesn't mean that they always know exactly where it is. Like, we are literally shown that, and you just ignore it and you label it as a problem instead of accepting it as information. Literally nothing in the movie states or shows that they have such precise homing on the ring. In fact, the movie constantly shows that they do not have such precise homing on the ring. So why do you consistently expect it? I do not get it.
If you look really hard, you can see Tom Bombadil in this shot.
Okay, I don't really get this one. You just wanted to mention Tom Bombadil for the fans, didn't you? You know, padding the sin count and all that.
Either you don't care if Gandalf dies, in which case, just kill him. Or you want to keep him alive for some reason, in which case, don't put him in a prison that basically anyone would die in at the first thunderstorm.
He put him somewhere he couldn't escape from, where he'd essentially be forced to watch what Saruman was doing. It's basically just mental torture. Making Gandalf watch what he was doing was literally half the point. And a bare, exposed place on the pinnacle of a tower is a way worse prison than an enclosed one safely on the ground. And why would he die at the first thunderstorm? Just because he's high up? Let's also remember that Gandalf literally harvests lightning to kill the Balrog later, and Saruman literally calls down lightning to a specific location on a mountain miles away, so there's precedent that neither wizard would allow such a thing to happen.
I know the hobbits are here for comic relief, for the most part, at least early on, but damn, nobody is anywhere near that stupid to light a fire on a tower at night when you're hiding from supernatural hunting machines. Nobody.
Are you really in a position to call anyone else stupid? It's being true to their character. They simply do not understand the danger they're in until this very scene.
Also, Strider says he's just going to have a look around when he leaves the hobbits. Where did he go and how far away? He didn't see the fire immediately and start running back to slap all the hobbits for starting one? And he didn't notice the Nazgul anywhere while he was looking around?
Okay, here's another thing you do a lot of. It's called a gish gallop. You just bombard us with stuff. You asked how many questions just there? Let's answer them in order.
Strider says he's just going to have a look around when he leaves the hobbits. Where did he go and how far away?
We don't know how far, we don't know where, and it doesn't matter.
He didn't see the fire immediately and start running back to slap all the hobbits for starting one?
Nothing actually so much as implies that that's not exactly what actually happened.
And he didn't notice the Nazgul anywhere while he was looking around?
Again, nothing so much as implies that that's not what actually happened. Well, clearly he either went far enough away that he couldn't see, or maybe he went to the opposite side of the hill where he couldn't see the hobbits anymore because, you know, you can't see through a hill. Or he did see the fire and he was on his way back to slap some sense into the hobbits, but he had traveled so far away that the ring wraiths simply got there first. Either way, how is this a sin of the movie?
After we've seen them straight up murder people for asking who goes there, the Nazgul finally find the hobbits and decide to go into a slow attack formation so that Strider can show up in time to save the day.
First of all, what the hell happened with Nazgul?
Who goes there? The Nazgul.
Secondly, it's all about the ring, baby.
Oh, these bad guys are afraid of water and fire. Wow, so Earth is like the only major element they're not afraid of?
Bad joke. And you're just ignoring air. Probably because they're clearly shown to dominate it later.
He's been stabbed by a Morgul blade.
You know, the kind that dissolve dramatically after you identify?
This is something you might actually be able to label as a convenience for the sake of runtime, but correlation doesn't equal causation. You don't think a possibility is that it dissolves shortly after being used, and that a logical reason that it wouldn't dissolve immediately after use is so that it can keep being used for an undisclosed amount of time before dissolving, you know, because it's a stabby weapon? Maybe it dissolves because a mortal has touched it? Not that it matters, but in the book it's sunrise that triggers it. Should they have done that in the movie? Would that really have prevented you from sinning the movie for the evaporating blade? No, you just would have called it convenient that it dissolved at that point and asked why it didn't dissolve at some other time instead.
You know the Athelas plant?
Athelas?
Kingsfoil.
Kingsfoil, it's a weed.
Weed is the answer to everything.
I mean, I agree, but he said a weed, not weed. And clearly pipeweed is more like weed than kingsfoil is, for fuck's sake.
Ah, I see. Elf horses have turbo mode.
I mean, aren't we basically shown that elves and elvish function as magic for our simple human minds? And do regular horses, like in the real world, not have the ability to be spurred into a faster speed? What is this? This is filler. This is nothing.
Well, we're only an hour in, but it's already clear that good old H2O is the real hero of Middle-earth.
See? Setup and payoff. What sin number was that?
Arwen has the ability to summon a tsunami of water horses. What a strangely specific ability.
We're literally being shown that it's the words she's speaking. So why are you making it out like it's specifically Arwen's ability? She just knows how to do it. She's not the only one who can do it. And yes, this is a place where I, as the book nerd, would like to point out that Arwen isn't in this scene in the book. It's Glorfindel who helps the group, and it's Elrond and Gandalf who make the flood and the horses in it, respectively.
Aquila ex machina.
Ah, yes. Our first encounter with your misuse of ex machina. Aquila? Stop trying to sound smart. We know you just used Google.
Is there really nothing that Saruman can do about the eagle? Isn't he a powerful wizard? Doesn't he cause a f***ing avalanche from hundreds of miles away later in the movie? He spins Gandalf around and closes doors with his mind, but an eagle is just too tall of an order.
First of all, your pronunciation of Saruman.
Is there really nothing that Saruman can do? Is there really nothing that Saruman can do about the eagle?
No, not really. We see how long it takes him to do that, and the mountain isn't a moving target. Also, I knew you knew that Saruman could control lightning. And as for spinning Gandalf, he was a weakened, still opponent. And as for the doors, they are inanimate objects. And they were in close proximity.
So Elrond knows this is a ring of supreme evil. All the evil in the world can be ended by throwing the ring in the fire, but he lets Isildur go without a fight. He could have thrown him into the fire and then ran out screaming, "Oh no, Isildur fell into the fire. Whatever will we do? Oh, the humanity."
First of all, your pronunciation of Isildur, despite it literally being said right before you speak. Secondly, you do realize that you're suggesting Elrond start a war between men and elves, right? You want him to attack the new High King of Men? Consequences be damned? Thirdly, Isildur is Elrond's distant nephew. Númenor was founded by Elrond's twin brother, and Isildur is a direct descendant of Elrond's twin brother. Why would he attack one of the last living descendants of his twin brother? Lastly, why do you think that Isildur can't defend himself? Especially since he now bears the One Ring. Like, think?
You have my sword. And you have my bow.
And my axe.
You mean the axe you just shattered while trying to destroy the ring?
No, I'm pretty sure he means the clearly perfectly intact axe that he held up as he said it. We're shown later that Gimli wields at least 3 different axes, guy.
You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring.
Roll credits. Oh, wait.
So the other channels who do this kind of thing of nitpicking your videos always count this roll credits gag as a sin of your videos, but I actually disagree here. I think this is my favorite running gag of the channel. It's a joke I actually often made myself before I even found your channel all those years ago. I'm not going to remove a sin because in the end it's not a sin of the movie, so you shouldn't be adding to the counter for these. But I'm just pointing out why I'm not jumping on the bandwagon and adding a sin like everyone else does. I actually like this joke.
Where did they get sausages? Did they make them themselves out here in the wild? Or are they carrying raw meat casings for 40 days without refrigeration and then eating them?
No, they're obviously not making sausages out in the wild. This kind of facetiousness, this intentional obtuseness is just annoying. It's not funny. It's just annoying. I thought it was common knowledge that sausages are the kind of thing capable of being preserved for journeys like these. Like, haven't you ever played Oregon Trail? Also, where are you getting 40 days? Don't just pull numbers out of nowhere. It doesn't help make your point.
We must hold this course west of the Misty Mountains for 40 days. If our luck holds, the Gap of Rohan will still be open to us.
That doesn't mean that's how many days have passed now. Isn't the implication that he's saying that in this scene, meaning that the 40 days have not yet passed? Like, they're 40 days of future time?
So, Gandalf, you tried to lead them over Garadras.
These birds have no f***ing clue that that's where Gandalf decided to go. They flew past them. They may have seen them go run and hide, but they weren't around to hear Gandalf say where they were going to go next.
You know, you actually have a bit of a point with this one. However, I'd respond with the fact that Saruman knows the only 3 ways to get to where they're going from where they are. The Gap of Rohan, which is the way he would want them to choose, Cardras, the one we see him prevent them from using, and Moria, the one he assumes correctly that Gandalf would never choose. Saruman just didn't foresee Gandalf letting someone else lead the way, or that someone else would even choose what was probably the most dangerous way to go. I'd like to make a note that this is a change from the book. Gandalf actually wants to go through Moria in the book, and it's Aragorn who does not want to go through Moria. Gandalf is just as curious as Gimli to find out what happened in Moria. I'm not going to add a sin, but I'm also not going to remove one.
Let us go through the mines of Moria. Let the ring-bearer decide.
What a cop-out.
How is this a cop-out? Gandalf's just leaving it to fate, the thing that he clearly thinks is important throughout this series.
My heart tells me that Gollum has some part to play, for good or ill. There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil. Bilbo was meant to find the ring, in which case you also were meant to have it. And that is an encouraging thought.
How is this a sin of the film? A sin of a character isn't a sin of the film. And I don't even think it's a sin of Gandalf.
How does Gimli not know about this? Or Gandalf? This obviously happened a long time ago. Sure, there's no internet or phones, but word should have traveled faster than this.
If everyone died, then who would have told them? And what does how long ago it happened have to do with anything? For the record, one of the things that was discussed at the Council of Elrond in the book was what happened in Moria. No one knows. Gimli is curious, Gandalf is curious, Elrond is curious. This movie clearly shows that Gimli doesn't expect anyone to be dead when they first arrive in Moria. All of this has been a shock to him from the very beginning. Why are you only questioning it now?
These hobbits over here on the left give no indication whatsoever that a cave troll is about to peek around the corner.
Oh wow, look, a good point.
Why isn't Frodo's blade glowing right now? Are all the orcs dead?
You know what? That's another good point, and it's something that has always irked me about the movies. They don't use Sting or Glamdring correctly. Gandalf's sword is also supposed to glow just like Sting does. They literally showed Sting glowing earlier in this very scene. It was deemed too much of a distraction, right? It's not negligence that it only glows sometimes, right? Nope, I'm hearing no. It turns out it's negligence. Jackson and the editing crew acknowledge it's just an inconsistency. Awesome.
Or right now. Right now there's definitely some orcs close enough to cause that blade to glow blue, right?
It's technically just the same sin again, repeated to pad the sin count, but, right? Right?
Gandalf said it was a 4-day trip through the mines, but it takes the Fellowship like a couple of hours, if that, to get to the other side.
It's a 4-day journey to the other side.
We're not really shown how long it takes for them to get from the doors of Durin to where Gandalf sits and thinks about where to go, nor how long they wait for Gandalf to remember which way to go, nor really are we shown how long it takes to get from there to the Chamber of Mazarbul. Again, why do you just not understand cutting the passage of time?
8 that are here, yet 9 there were set out from Rivendell. Tell me, where is Gandalf?
Dude, this movie is 3 hours. Couldn't you just ask where Gandalf is right off the bat?
Ah yes, the classic, these movies are too long already idea. Plenty of people want these movies to be even longer, myself included. So this is subjective BS, and it's not a sin of the film. This is part of the world building. If you don't like high fantasy, then don't watch it. Also, aren't you the guy who's just been constantly asking questions, the answers to which you would only get by elongating the runtime of this movie? Yes, you are. Also, plenty of movies these days actually reach the runtime of Fellowship of the Ring. Not just theatrical, but even the extended, so I don't understand why these films still have this negative connotation about them.
The mirror shows many things.
Why would the mirror show his friends making troubled glances? What can be learned from that? I could have told you that.
You could have told them what? Your friends are giving you nervous glances? I mean, those are literally shots from Frodo's perspective we've already seen in the movie. It's reinforcing Frodo's anxiety. You're gonna tell him that people are gonna look at him nervously? What?
He will try to take the ring. You know of whom I speak.
I'd love to tell you which person by name, but I'm afraid he'll hear this telepathic communication that only you can hear.
No, that's just missing the point. She doesn't have to name Boromir. We're shown that she can literally read their minds and speak directly into them telepathically. You don't think Frodo knows who she's talking about? Because she's clearly seen that Frodo is already thinking it's Boromir before she even telepathically said anything in the first place. Do you seriously never speak with any sort of subtlety at all? Come on. It's not the pronoun game when the person being spoken to knows who's being referred to with the pronoun. And it's not even really the pronoun game for the audience because they've already set up the idea that it would be Boromir out of everybody. Doy.
Not dark, but beautiful and terrible as the dawn!
Terrible as the dawn? The is that supposed to mean?
I'm just going to quote Mary Tower's answer on Quora here. I can think of 3 fairly reasonable possibilities. Galadriel is old enough to remember a world before the moon and the sun even existed. She saw the sun rise for the first time. It must have been pretty weird. Unlike the moon, which the elves favor, the sun is regarded by elves as a sign from men. Supposedly, the moment of its first rising was the moment men first awoke. As the elves wane and men come into their power, the sun must be an unwelcome reminder of what's to come. The Maya driving the sun, Arwen, is a fire spirit, and she's described as personally quite terrifying. Too bright were the eyes of Arwen for even the Eldar to look on. And leaving Valinor, she forsook the form and raiment which, like the Valar, she had worn there, and she was as a naked flame, terrible in the fullness of her splendor. So yes, the sun could quite reasonably be considered terrible by Galadriel. Tolkien literally describes the person in charge of the sun as terrible. Galadriel knew that Maya. She was born and raised in Valinor. She lived there for thousands of years. And on top of that, to add to the weirdness and the terribleness of the first sunrise itself, the sun and the moon only even came into being because Morgoth and Ungoliant came and destroyed the trees of light in Valinor. So they're constant reminders of the marring of Valinor and the day the Silmarilli were stolen, which directly led to her personal ban from what's essentially heaven. The sun probably actually pisses Galadriel off. That being said, though, that is all book information, and therefore I cannot sin CinemaSins for it. And the only explanation I can come up with as far as the movie is concerned is that it is just poetic and delivered magnificently. It's also another change from the books, and it actually makes less sense than what she says in the book. And now at last it comes. You will give me the ring freely. In place of the Dark Lord, you will set up a queen, and I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night. Fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair. So she says, and I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night. So beautiful is in reference to morning, terrible is in reference to night. I'm not going to add a sin, but I did need to explain that.
Oh, now it's glowing again, and long before the orcs are even in view.
Right? Right?
The Uruk-hai throws a shield at Aragorn's neck that has a neck-sized hole at the end of it.
Okay. One of these conveniences you're always so annoyed about? How is this a sin of the movie? It's literally the reason Lurtz even threw it at Aragorn like that in the first place. So if the shield wasn't like that, then the scene wouldn't have played out the same way. And that's a sin of the movie. How? Like they would have had a different fight?
Frodo screams and stares at a drowning Sam for several seconds before helping him.
Yeah, so you've never experienced shock before? Also, he's in a boat, you know, something that hobbits are explicitly really unfamiliar and uncomfortable with. Like, hobbits aren't good with water. Hell, Frodo's parents died in a drowning incident involving a boat. It's literally why he lives with Bilbo in the first place. Frodo probably hates being in that boat.
Geez, how deep can a hobbit reach into the water from a boat?
As far as their arm allows? Like, what about this shot so much as implies that it's infeasible? Like, hobbits are small, yes, but that means that Sam could be fully engulfed by the water like this in a relatively shallow body of water. What we're shown simply doesn't show Frodo's arm to be unrealistically long or anything like that. I do not understand this criticism. So many sins. Nonsense, nonsense.
Cast it into the fire!
Implying that this movie shouldn't even be watched. No, implying that this movie shouldn't even exist just because of your inane observations and irrelevant questions. Even if all of these sins did actually mean anything and matter, then this movie just straight up shouldn't exist? And you're a movie fan? I love how little you actually had to work with for this video. I really appreciate the older videos more after all the experience with your newer content that's just bloated with BS sins to pad the runtime. If this video were made today, then you'd have shown so much more of the movie just to BS your way through fake reasons to show great scenes. I was genuinely surprised at the lack of so many scenes, such as Gandalf's fall or Boromir's death. I'm surprised there wasn't a sin for the opening credits other than the creative choice of the sound start before the video. I see a lot of complaints about the prologue online.
I have seen it.
Still, even though this is a more accurately condensed list of sins, it's still absolutely loaded with ignorance, misrepresentation, misunderstandings, and straight up lies. And the lack of sin removals for things like the score or how badass the Balrog was. I mean, look at those effects. The Balrog looks so good. This was 2001. It's way better than basically anything in the entire Hobbit trilogy. The cave troll looks super wonky, but there's actually a lot of well-hidden CGI in the trilogy. This movie in particular. It's changed since I first started watching this to when I wrote the script to when I started making this to now that I'm finished making it. The final sin count is 85. For the record, that is 31 more sins than CinemaSins found with the movie. I found more problems with your 8-minute video than you found with a 3-hour movie.
Fool of a took.
Woof, dude. Woof. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of my response down in the comments. Did I miss any points? Did I make any mistakes myself? Please let me know. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon to receive notifications. I've got more Lord of the Rings content in the works, so you're not going to want to miss that. Please check out my other channels, RichieNicks for music and such, and RichieNicksGeeking for gaming content, obviously. Follow me on social media at RichieNicksYT, and I'll see you down in the comments. RichieNicksGeeking signing off.